up? What is going on YouTube? Thank y'all for tapping. Anybody catch the replay? Hashtag replay game, please. And thank you. Don't forget that like button. Don't be a peeping Tom, man. This is a no buster zone. You gotta participate.
Thumbs down. Okay, just hit it.
Even if you do a thumbs down, it don't matter. As long as you go,
don't matter. Just hit it. You know.
Don't matter. Just do so. You can even you can put middle finger in the chat. I don't care. What you want to do? I don't care. I'll take it. Pause. It don't matter. It all counts. It all counts.
Facts.
I see you representing for the homie Winston. Let's go.
So
another sword, boy.
Long sleeve, this sleeve. You don't slack on the back.
Definitely not slacking on the back. What were you?
Of course, it might be coming off. This is an old shirt. It's been drying a bunch.
I'm representing from homie Mike and Banana Bread. And I got to coordinate, so representing for the homies. Damn, exotics. Yeah, let's go. They're not slacking on the back either.
See what I'm saying? Let's go. And they got the QR code. Come on.
And the QR code. So get y'all phones ready. Get them out. Get them going. Yeah. I don't even know if I should even get focused. Let me back up. I don't need to get focused. Man. How was your weekend, brother?
Good. How about yours? Finally got over this cold. Actually, after the last week's show, the next day, I was sick as a dog all the way till probably like Friday or Saturday.
Damn.
Yep.
Damn, that's rough, man.
So finally, I got over that and had a good, calm, relaxed weekend after that, and not back out of this week. Can't complain at all.
Yeah, can't complain. Weekend was pretty good. I wanted Seattle to win the Super Bowl, and they won the Super Bowl, so that was good.
Come on. Yeah, Patriots had it too many times. They needed a break.
They did enough. It was a pretty decent game. If you like defense, then you love the game. So.
Yep. When a high scoring game. I mean, well, for the other team towards the end, there were some scores. I knew throughout the whole game it wasn't going to be,
Yeah, towards the end. Try to make it look like it was something, but it was just a bunch of punting.
Yep.
So before we get started, man, we're gonna drop this sponsorship video. So if y'all got anything y'all need to do, go do it now. In just a second, as soon as I pull it up, boom, there it is.
Lindworm Exotics specializes in a multitude of reptiles such as ball pythons, dual boas, coastal rosy boas, and false water cobras, to name a few. They are dedicated to providing the public with well-adjusted animals with superior quality. Follow them on Instagram and Morph Market. Black Box Reptile Cages should be your go-to for high-quality reptile enclosures and rack systems. They offer versatile hatchling and adult racks that work with both Vision and Freedom Breeder tubs, as well as a wide range of terrestrial, arboreal, and bioactive cages. Located in Beaufort, Georgia, Black Box Reptile Cages offers local pickup as well as ship and freight. Check them out at blackboxcages.com and use code WhiskeyBomb25 for 5% off. Selected Reptiles works with a wide range of genetic combos, including Hypo VPI Xanthic, DG VPI Xanthic, and Zebra, but where they stand out is their work with Monsoon, Monarch, Sunset, and other high-end morphs. In addition to reptiles, they produce premium feeder rodents, delivering to Florida, Georgia, and North and South Carolina. Make sure to use promo code WhiskeyBomb5 for 5% off any snake. Check them out on Wolf Market or reach out directly. From fur to feathers, Fuzzy Acres has your feeder needs covered. Whether you're looking for frozen rats, bulk rabbits, or harder to find feeders like quail and guinea pigs, they've got the stock serious keepers rely on. Visit fuzzyacres.com for clean, healthy feeders that are frozen and shipped with care. Remember to use code WhiskeyBomb10 to save 10% on any order, and as always, enjoy free shipping on all orders over $300. Grant and Mary of Rec Room Snakes have been breeding ball pythons and Woma pythons for over a decade. They're staples within the ball python realm, and most notably known for their work with the paint mutation and putting it to multiple codoms and recessives to truly unlock its potential. Please give them a follow on Morph Market to check out their incredible animals, and on Instagram to keep up with their projects. Ninja Balls is more than a breeder, he's a creator. He's the innovative thinker that brought you the Kiki Ball. He strives to make living works of art and improve upon them year in and year out. Follow him today on Instagram at Morph Market, and know that with each purchase you make, you're getting quality.
Bone Daddy Serpents is just getting started in the ball python industry, but he has major plans involving high-end genes such as Monarch and Sunset. Please keep an eye out on him because his passion and determination is going to take him very far within this industry.
Thank you to the sponsor, the special shout out to Shades of Blue, and I got to do this for Husbandry Pro. Special shout out to Shades of Blue, our network sponsor. Big salute to y'all. It was all that y'all do for us. Make sure you follow on Instagram and Morph Market today. I see you up in the chat, Kyle. Thanks for tapping in. Appreciate you. Appreciate you. C Dub, appreciate you for tapping in. My man Josh, what it do? Thanks for tapping in. All right, without further ado, we're gonna bring out Chris from Snake Spirit, breeder of emerald tree boas and pythons.
What's up, man?
What's going on? How you doing? How you doing?
Not too bad, not too bad. Nice to meet you.
It is great to meet you. I hope you don't mind giving a quick little spiel of who you are and what is that you do.
Well, so my name's Chris, and I basically work with emerald tree boas primarily, and green tree pythons as well. So I've been keeping too long now. Started when I was a kid, and then was really into it for a long time. Started around 12 years old, something like this, early mid 90s. And my group of friends that I grew up with, all in my little circle, were all snake geeks. So I got turned on to keeping from Barry Swope, who's a ball python breeder.
Yeah.
And my friend Mike Fabrizio as well. And we just all geeked out, catching stuff in the wild and keeping whatever we could get our hands on back then. That was, this is dating myself because this was when ball pythons were still not really being bred and not, basically were a pain in the ass to even keep. So, fast forward a little bit, started working at an importer for a while. So got that experience of dealing with wild caught stuff on a large scale and all the stuff that goes around, all the good and bad that goes with that. And actually used to, because I think this is primarily a ball python centered show. We probably had all sorts of morphs that were passing through our hands that we didn't even realize at that point. We didn't know really. Like, I remember picking stuff out, and it was like, this looks like it's, you'd get a shipment of, however many, few hundred or 1,000 bush babies that were anywhere from fresh hatchlings to the yearlings, and you'd see little mutations where it's like, oh, there's 3 or 4 of them look all the same, but it was all subtle stuff, and didn't realize that holding that stuff back and pairing it together would produce some of the crazier stuff. All the crazy stuff. So who knows what I'll pass through, at that point. I'm sure we didn't probably see anything too crazy. I don't remember anything really insane looking, but definitely stuff that it's like, I'm sure that turned into something. So and then basically fast forward, worked there for a couple of years, got big time burnt out on the industry from that experience. And then I actually ended up stopping keeping for quite a few years. I think it was about 10 years, maybe 15 years. But my friends continued, and I kept, I would enjoy their stuff, just live vicariously through them. And then it was 2017. Our friend, within the group, our friend passed away, and his brother offered me the green tree python that he was keeping at that time.
Heck yeah.
And man, that shit, I've said it a bunch of times before, that like reignited the flame like
Yeah.
0 to 100 overnight practically. It was just like, it went from I'm just going to keep the 1 to like now it's 2 to now it's 10 to now it's like, you know. So it really, really turned that whole thing back on. And then I started keeping the emeralds in 2019. And then that became my focus because I really just, you know, they just quickly became my favorite. I love the green trees too. I mean, I love all sorts of stuff, but the emeralds became my kind of favorite thing.
What kind of like intrigued you more towards the emeralds out of all the others? What kind of like really was like, I want to tackle this, I want to do this? I mean, you're killing it, you know.
It was a few different things. It was I mean, mostly just I love those animals a little bit more. I like the way they move a little bit more. I've always kind of leaned a little more towards boas versus pythons, although I love both. So the movement of them, the look of them, the different phenotypes, the build of them, and then the challenge of it, because, you know, that was, for me, that was a big thing. That was like, you know, they're notorious for being really hard to work with, or, you know, the northerns anyways. The basins have been established, I think, about 20 years now, something like this. So the basins, and although they used to have a lot of the same challenges back in the day, there's been guys like Ed Marino, Steve Volk, you know, I'm sure there's others I'm not thinking of at the moment. There's dudes in Europe doing it. And they've had good success for quite a few years with the basins, but the northerns have always been something that, you know, nobody's really been able to get rocking and rolling. So I figured, well, let me just see if I can get attempt to get something going there. And once I had that first litter, it was like, oh shit, man, I'm hooked.
Yeah.
And then it's just been, you know, slowly building the founding group from there, which has been a very slow process. I mean, it's coming up on 70 years since I started the project.
Okay.
And but, you know, been having good success with it since. And they're just this, I think they're really, I don't know if I'd say they're an underrated species, because most people do think they're cool. But I think they're underrated in the sense that people don't really know what they're working with if they've only dealt with like a sickly wild caught one.
Right.
I don't think there's that many people that have had the experience of really seeing and working with a captive bred animal. You know. Oh, so Kyle said, how many litters have I produced? I produced 10 litters so far.
10.
What's the average size litter?
I don't know if I've averaged. It's probably averages out to be somewhere between like 7 to 10.
Okay.
So I've had a couple. I've had one or two. I had one litter that was just totally bunk. It was almost all slugs, and then 2 really undeveloped or underdeveloped babies that didn't survive. It was a very premature litter, so something went wrong there. And then I've had 1 or 2 others that were kind of like, you know, not very good, where it was low live baby count, high slugs. But then I've had quite a few, the rest of them all have been really high success rate, where the majority of the babies were fully developed and born live. But almost every litter, you know, you get at least 1 or 2 slugs. I think I've had 2 perfect litters.
Okay.
But usually, you know, with boas, it's pretty common. You get a couple of slugs here and there.
Do you think like maybe those big litters that you lost, were those more like due to just more learning and dialing down the temps and all that, right? Or was it just?
I think a lot of it's temperature. Yeah, I think that's a big factor. I don't know if it's the only thing, but I think I think the big factors are temperature, humidity is another part of it, and then I'm sure sometimes it's just a matter of timing. I wonder sometimes if the females, you know, if they end up ovulating a little earlier than they really should,
Right.
and then, you know, you get basically premature developed follicles and they don't develop fully. It's kind of hard to tell. There's still so much work to be done to understand what's going on, but that's what I think. I think heat's been probably my biggest problem overall. Is I think the first couple litters, it was the first litter was I was heating them with external heat mats on the outside of the enclosure, and it was like the female couldn't get warm enough, so she was just hugging that heat. And I think what happens there sometimes is basically if they feel like they can't get enough heat, or it's not penetrating, something's not telling them that they're getting warm enough, they'll sit there and overcook because they just don't have enough sense I don't know exactly what's going on there with reptiles, but reptiles definitely in some cases will overcook. You know, even when they're not gravid. You know what I mean? I don't know. Thankfully, they don't really seem to be very popular these days, but like, you know, that was a common thing with the hot rocks back in the day.
Yeah, like
You
their
just have a snake
paint
that would just
aren't working. Or something.
yeah, dude, it would just sit there. I mean, my first ball python, you know, she burnt the hell out of her belly. I mean,
like they
literally
have-
burnt, scabbed up. It was bad. It just sat there, and I wouldn't even have known it if I hadn't just happened to have taken her out that day. She maybe would have just literally cooked herself to death because I just happened to pick her up, and I'm like, what is going on? Like, why she got like a bacon belly? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
It like makes you wonder if they got like, you know, like no sensory to pain at all, you know, because I mean, I've heard horror stories and seen pictures and horror stories of even rats chewing up snakes, you know, and stuff, and you're like, how did that snake
How did
sit
it
there
happen?
and that happen, you know?
well,
But
that was a thing back in the day. I think they definitely experience pain, but I mean, they have a most likely a pretty high threshold for it.
right,
So a pretty high tolerance. And then I think with you know, the rat attack's a separate thing, but with the heat, I think something just doesn't trigger correctly. Certain types of heat, I think, is what it is. It's like it just doesn't register that they've actually achieved the temperature that they need to. And
Right.
then something, there's got to be some kind of cue, some kind of biological cue that doesn't register, and so they just sit there and continue cooking and cooking and cooking.
You know, because you think like we'd be to the point if you put us it'd be to the point where we're wiggling and we can't stop moving, you can't stand it, you know, and they're not. They're just
No,
like,
they'll just sit there.
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
they'll just sit there and eat it,
like
so.
no sentence to it at all. Like it's not even happening. It just blows my mind sometimes when you see it. You're like, what the how? You know? But,
Yeah, it's weird. And then with the rat attack stuff, I've seen that, you know, that was something we dealt with a couple times back in the day, when doing all live for feeders. I hardly ever feed live anymore. I just do live for the live hoppers for starting some of the babies. But you know, a big rat can do a lot of damage.
Oh, heck
If
yes.
it's attacking a snake that is too stressed and basically too shut down to respond to it, they'll just get attacked and get torn up pretty bad. So that was something, you know, you learned that lesson back in the day, that you don't want to leave them unsupervised. If they're you know, hesitant to feed and super shy and super stressed, and you just leave a big old rat that's aggressive in with them, it can absolutely kill the snake.
You can be pretty detrimental for sure.
Yeah.
That's why I don't do Norwegians or anything. I stick with ASFs, and then when I do feed, I give them like, you got a 30-minute window. If I come back in here and it ain't down, then you miss your window on to the next week, you know.
I mean, I know it's common with a lot of the ball python guys to feed live, so you've got the routines of that down on how, you know,
Oh yeah.
what you kind of learn, I'm sure, from one snake to the next, what the general window is of, if it didn't take it within a 30 minutes or an hour, you know, it's more than likely not going to take it, and then just pull the prey at them at that point. But with the emeralds, you know, I've not had a lot of need to use live with them. Even though that's how a lot of people end up getting the wild caught adults to start, I've never really felt that to be necessary, and I've never really got a great response out of that. The babies respond to the live hoppers and fuzzies really well, but the oh shit, am I echoing?
No,
Hang on, let me see. Is that me? Let me change. Let me see. Does this fix it?
oh, sounds better. Sounds
No,
better.
all right. It must be on somebody else's end now. Okay, well, hopefully it's not too bad.
Did it go away?
But I'm still
My
hearing it. Yeah, let me see.
So, because I don't even have it to go on my end.
Yeah,
There's going.
it's super loud for me. Oh, it's fixed now.
Yes, fixed now.
Okay, cool. All good. Where was I? Oh, talking about the rat situation. Yeah, so the live stuff, I just basically, you know, fuzzies and hoppers for the juveniles, because they respond to that pretty well, and then switch them over to frozen thawed from there, and seems to work pretty well, you know, overall.
Are you doing frozen Norwegians or ASFs, mice?
Mostly just, I guess, frozen Norwegians. I've used ASFs here and there, but
Okay.
I've never, the emeralds don't really seem to be real into scent. I mean, I've had a few where it's like if they didn't want to take, you know, a mouse or a standard mouse or rat, then I try an ASF. Most of them don't really seem to care, at least when they're juveniles. But I have had a couple of adults that they would not eat anything other than a hamster.
Oh wow. Okay.
And that got them. Yeah. So got a frozen thawed hamsters, and that was a trick we used to use back in the day for ball pythons. The you know, the gerbils and the hamsters would get the wild caught ones that wouldn't eat anything, you know, that would just basically starve themselves otherwise. Then they would take, most of the time, almost always, they would end up taking a live gerbil or a live hamster. But it was those different, it was those fancier hamsters. The why can't I think about it? Siberian dwarf hamsters is what it was.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So those that for whatever reason, those and the gerbils, man, they would work well. But those gerbils could be aggressive, so you had to watch out. They seemed like they were even more likely to bite than the rats were. Mm-hmm.
I can remember that as a kid because my little gerbils were buttheads.
Yeah. Hamsters too, man. I got tore up by a hamster one time. I was watching for my brother's friend and bit the shit out of me. I reached in just trying to play with it, bit the ever living shit out of me. I was like, man, this thing's.
I was like, get off my spinning wheel.
It was not having it.
So it seems like you definitely got the emeralds died down, which is pretty cool. Was that kind of challenging for you? Because I mean, there's not a lot of people. I mean, you're kind of, how are you piggybacking off the knowledge with that? Or did you just talk to people in UK? I mean, how are you going about attacking everything?
I absorbed as much as I could from all the people that, you know, have shared things over the years. Like the primary guy's been Ed Marino. So Ed's been working. I mean, Ed's, you know, probably I don't think anybody can probably come close to the numbers Ed has produced as far as basins. But Ed used to work with Northerns too back in the day. So he's worked with both the Northerns and the basins, and then he switched over to just all basins at some point. I think that maybe 15 years ago, 10 years ago, something like this. I don't know exactly. It was before I started even working with him. So Ed's been doing this since like 84 or something. You know what I mean? So Ed's he's shared a lot of knowledge, you know, on the forums and Facebook groups and all that stuff. And he's done one or two interviews. And so I paid close attention to the things that he's talked about, in particular, like, you know, the more nuanced stuff regarding humidity and you know, making sure that they're hydrated and fed properly and not overfeeding them. That's something I think happens sometimes, is they're not at all like, you know, a ball python or something. You give an emerald just a couple of hefty meals spaced close together, and it's going to get obese, and it's going to just be a slug on a stick. It's not going to move. It's going to get backed up. It's going to be really constipated, and you start having a lot of problems. So it's one of the it's funny because it's like it in a way it's easier because you just basically feed them less.
Right.
But you got to pay attention to it. You got to make sure that you're not overloading them too much, which is easy to do. And that keeps them, you know, if you're not overloading them with food and you're letting them actually defecate before you feed the next meal, all those little things like that just seem to help them do better. And then I just paid close. One of the things I do a little differently, I don't spray mine at all, which I make a lot of jokes. No, I don't, not at all. And so I make a lot of jokes about it and play around with the topic. But basically, like my belief on it is that humidity is the real key and not the water droplets. Like the droplets are basically inconsequential. They can, you know, take them or leave them.
Right.
It's just really what it is humidity and fresh water. You know what I mean? They'll drink. They're not stupid. A lot of people seem to talk about them as if they're stupid. Like, oh, they don't know how to drink unless you're spraying them. And I don't find that to be true at all. They respond to fresh water however you give it to them, whether it be in a water bowl, an elevated bowl. I mean, some of them will drink right out of a little, you know, cup of water in your hand. I don't advise doing that for most, for a lot of adults, because depending on the temperament of the animal, like emerald's teeth are no joke. They really it's a whole different ball game. I've been bitten by all sorts of shit back in the day, and I've been bitten by snakes twice the size of an adult emerald, and it does not leave anywhere near the amount of damage and pain that a 4 or 5 foot big, if they mean to do it. If they just lightly tag you in a defensive manner and it's not like a real, serious, there's just kind of a little nip, then you're just going to basically you know, it's not going to hurt that much, but you'll still be like, damn, why am I bleeding that much from that? Like, they draw blood. And but if they hit you hard and they mean to, I mean, it'll bruise up bad. It's you know, it's no joke.
Jesus.
And leave, you know.
All I think of is that picture, you know, where they're open.
Yeah.
It's got
You look at the teeth,
you know.
And the teeth is really the size of the teeth is a big thing, but it's the power of their jaws.
Yep.
You see one, and you'll see it when they hit a prey item. You see them bite down, and it's like, you know, their eyes are squished into their head because they're squeezing their jaws. That power of that grip is so crazy, and it doesn't feel good if they hit you on the hand with that or on the arm or whatever.
That and the force that they have behind their punch when they bite, you know, from what I've understood and what I've heard is it could bruise you pretty damn bad too.
Oh, it does. It bruises every time. Yeah, I've never, even the babies will leave a bruise if they bite you and mean it. And you're just like, it's like, man, you little shit, you got some power behind you for the size.
Yep.
And so, but that said, I think that they get a bad rap for being aggressive and overly defensive, and I don't really think they are. If you know how to work with them, if you know how to approach them right and know how to handle them, they're not really very aggressive at all. At least in my experience. Now, I do understand that I have more experience working with snakes and a variety of stuff than your average person. So I don't ever encourage people to just start handling theirs all the time, especially an adult, you know, until you're comfortable and you know how to work with it. And even then, I don't think that they're a species that appreciates being handled all that often.
Right.
You know what I mean? Every now and again, I'm like in between, like, you know, there's some people that feel like they should be handled all the time, and then there's other people that feel like they should never be looked at. You know, it's like, don't even fucking look at them, let alone touch them. I'm not on either side of that. I'm more in the middle of it.
Right.
I think that, you know, a reasonable, if you know how to handle them right, and you know, and you're comfortable, and you know how to keep them comfortable while you're handling them, you know, a little bit of exercise is not a bad thing, and probably actually a good thing for them. But I think overdoing it, just like any snake, you overhandle them too much, and whether they're showing it to you right away or not, it's causing stress. Yeah. And in the long term, it's going to, you know, shorten their lives in a lot of cases. I mean, everybody knows that about, you know, any like traveling education shows for reptiles, you know, those snakes that are getting passed around and draped on everybody's necks, like they always live shorter lives, and, you know, they never do as well because it's just chronic stress. You know what I mean?
24/7 stress. They never get a down level. I was gonna say like a downtime for it to like really acclimate back to its normal life. It's just always on the go, move, you know?
Yeah. It's just a little too much, you know what I mean? There's a balance to be achieved there. And so I try to do that, you know.
Now, are you
a little bit of interaction. I think the thing you do, I think what is good is like regular, just light interaction with them. Where it's like, so basically they get used to you and understand that like you're not something that they need to freak out about every time they see you, because that's bad in my opinion too. If the snakes, any species really, but like if they're so freaked out by the sight of you that anytime you have to interact with them, they're just striking and flailing and freaking out, that's also stressful. So you want to try to get somewhere where, like, you know,
there's a happy
cool.
medium.
They're at least, even like I have one or two. You know, there's always animals that just you're not going to tame them no matter what. You know, I've got a female, an adult female that even, I mean, I think I've had her about 2 years. So it was an import, and I think about as good as it's going to get with her is that now I can change the water bowl without her immediately whipping around like ready to fight. Yeah. So she'll just kind of look at me, but like but you can't push it. You can't push it at all, man. And she's one of those snakes where it's like she's bold, so she's not going to tolerate anything from me. No BS whatsoever. She'll put up.
So put that hand on in here.
Yeah, and she's big enough to where I'm like, man, I'm not pushing her. I was nervous to pair her because I just started pairing her about a month I think ago or a few weeks ago for the first time, and I was real nervous because I'm like, man, if she turns around and nails that male, it's game over for him. You know what I mean? So
that was going to be a big question. Does that happen a lot with the emeralds? Like the female normally try to turn on the male and take them down, and that's it? You lost the male, you got to service another one, or how do you go about
I've
it?
been lucky. I've been lucky so far. I've not had it, but it's not. I don't know if it's common, but it's not that uncommon. I would say.
Okay.
Like
Okay.
I know a guy who just happened to have bad luck with it was the male that was aggressive, and I think that tends to be, from what most people have said, it tends to be the males that can get aggressive during breeding season. They just get temperamental. They're kind of hyped up, and they'll go after a female. And sometimes they'll just. I heard Ed tell a story about that where a male, I think, grabbed the female and then just wrapped her up to breed. You know what I mean? But he obviously did damage when he grabbed her.
Right.
But I've known guys where, the male killed the female, and then I'm sure vice versa.
Vice
Because
versa.
those teeth can just really just cause big
damage,
lacerations. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
big lacerations real quick. So it's always a little nerve wracking when I'm pairing them, because I've had green trees. I've had 3 or 4 incidences of a green tree python pairing where they fought. You know what I mean? Or it was like a food response where the one of them grabbed the other thinking it was food. But and so far, anyways, I know it's not been the case for everybody, but so far when that's happened with the green trees, it's really not been that much damage at all, and it was relatively easy to get them off each other, because the teeth just aren't the teeth size is not
Right.
comparable, and the even just the power and the strength is not the same, even with an equal sized animal. So when now I don't get as the first 1 or 2 times that happened, I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna lose the male, lose the female. I'm sure
That's
she's
what my
killing them.
worry would be. Like I gotta outsource another one.
Well, you got to be careful. I mean, you gotta watch it and get them separated as quick as possible, because they can. But as
Right.
long as you can get them separated quick and get them to hopefully let go without tearing and ripping each other apart like that, then it can be not that big of a deal. I mean, I've had that happen, and it was like 5 minutes later, neither of them looked like they had even remembered that they were that the incident
Right.
occurred. They didn't seem to be bothered at all.
Exactly.
So I'm like, man, he was trying to literally kill you 5 minutes ago. What are you talking? And now you're like cruising around the cage together like nothing. So yeah.
I kind of want to backtrack though, like to your feeding. Now, I was kind of thinking in my head now, because I know it can be pretty aggressive. I know for sure. But do you do tap training with them at all? Like when you go to feed, are you doing any of that?
No, I don't do any kind of specific stuff. And I feed them in I don't rarely ever do I separate them to a different feeding container.
Okay. Cool.
I know that can be effective for some people. That was something people were doing more back in the day, it seemed like to me.
Yep.
I don't hear as many people talking about it, and I've heard some kind of arguments in both directions of whether that's a good or a bad thing.
Correct.
I don't have a lot of opinion on it. I do it. I normally would just put them in a different enclosure to feed if there's like a specific reason. Like if it's something where it's like, if I had one that for whatever reason didn't want to eat in its regular enclosure, I might try putting it in something else, like a baby. I'll do that with juveniles every now and again, put them in something either smaller or larger or just different, what I mean, and see if it responds. Usually it does with the emeralds anyways. It doesn't seem to make much of a difference when I've tried that.
Either they don't.
For the most part, like they seem to respond. The 2 big things with them is the heat signature and then the movement. And the movement thing seems to be, it's like when you're establishing them, they respond. They definitely respond overall better to the live prey items, But I've gotten most of mine up until, this year is the first year I've really tried starting them on live. I was always doing frozen thawed before, and for the most part, I didn't have a whole lot of trouble. I mean, just like anything, you'll have individuals that are a pain.
Right.
But it's got to be warmed up. It definitely, like, they're much more so than even the chondros or really anything I've worked with. You can offer certain some of those emeralds, you offer them something that's warm, and they'll just look at it like they don't even recognize what it is, and then you heat it way up, and then they'll grab and wrap it. And like literally nothing else changed, just the difference in that extra bit of really superheating the prey item. And I don't know if I've wondered if that's like, you never really know what's going on in the heads of the snakes, but it's like, is this one's heat pits just more effective or less effective than another, and so it just doesn't, is it not registering that heat signature? I don't know. I'm just guessing on that stuff, but it does seem like some of them are a lot more particular about it than others.
That, and you gotta think too, like I like how you think like that. Like I think sometimes too, like like with carpets, for instance, I know they eat a lot of other prey than just mice and stuff. So I think in my head, like, are those other prey at a higher body temperature than, yeah, at a higher
Could be.
temperature than what, you know, we're trying over here to feed and keep it at, you know? I've always
Oh,
wanted,
sure, yeah.
some-
There's always
some
little stuff.
birds run a higher temperature at a way higher temperature than
Well, the emeralds, that's one of the things that a lot of people make the mistake of. For years, that was always thought to be the case, that they were always, and you'll still see it you know, written this way in books and online and shit. A lot of people still assume that they're bird eaters, but they're actually primarily rodent eaters in the wild.
right.
So
Yep.
I'm sure they do occasionally grab whatever they can get. So they'll obviously,
nearby. So you can-
Right.
yeah, they won't, you know, I'm not saying they won't eat a bird, but that's not the primary thing that they're feeding on. And the
Opportunity.
juveniles, we don't really, the juveniles, there seems to be so little information about what they do in the wild that there's really, you just kind of infer from what green tree python juveniles are doing. So it's pretty safe to say they're probably hunting lizards during the day, and starting off on lizards and frogs mostly, rather than, you know, rodents or birds. But we don't know 100% sure. They're easier to get started, I would say, overall on mice and baby rats compared to the chondros at first.
Right.
You know, as far as like, you don't, like I said, you don't have to do a lot of scenting with them or anything like that. Or at least I haven't had to. Whereas the chondros, the scenting makes a big difference with starting baby chondros in a lot of cases.
Oh yeah. I'd say like kind of like with the hog noses and stuff, they have a hard time. They say getting them started as babies, and that's because like what in the wild eat frogs naturally.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. What's that? Frog noses, hawk noses have been. You know, that's interesting how they've changed over the years. Because back in the day, that was another one of those things like ball pythons, where it was a nightmare to breed them and get the babies established, because they just didn't. Yeah, you couldn't get them to eat rodents. But now it seems like, you know, a lot of people have transitioned them over to rodent feeding and even starting the babies off that way, which is probably good and bad. Like, it's good for us, certainly more convenient. I don't know long term if it's better for the animals. Probably better if they ate, you know, frogs their whole life. But you know, who's able to source that, especially on a large scale? You know what I mean? It's just not doable.
I mean, it's I would say it's probably easy to source, but is it like, well, we would go source it easily? Is it like worth bringing that into your facility and giving that to your animals?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, same thing with lizards. It's like I could probably go and catch a million of nulls outside and try to start them on that.
Correct.
But what's going to happen?
Happen to my animal, right?
Yeah, I found a wild anole a couple years ago that had a weird, nasty eye infection. You know, that like its eyes were basically like infected and closed shut.
Oh, poor thing.
And we actually rehabilitated it. Like I had spent the time to put freaking antibiotic eye drops on this little anole, and I got it cleared up, and was like hand feeding this thing dried cricket parts and shit. So it was
That's
pretty
cool.
ridiculous. But I got it and let it go back out. But I was like, man, who knows what that was. It was whack. Whatever it was, and it's like, yeah, you don't want to be feeding that to the snakes. So
Heck no.
yeah.
So you said that you were talking backstage that you started going to Daytona back when it was Orlando in 1994.
Yeah, that was the first one I went to in '94.
Yeah.
So it was still a big show, already a big show, because it had already been running for a few years. I think the first one was 90 or 91 or maybe even 89. I don't remember. It was before we heard about it. And yeah, I have no idea. It was so long ago, I don't remember how we even found out about it, but it was like, you know, those first shows were, you can imagine being a kid and going to something like that back then, because it was a different thing then, because it was the only one, the only big one anyways for years. So it was like everybody came from around the world to go see that, to go to that show. And it was crazy as hell. And yeah, so we started went every year from there. I think, you know, 94, I think I stopped going I stopped going for like consistently somewhere like 2002, 2003, something like that.
Yeah.
So I don't remember what year that, I think it was 2000 or maybe 2001, whatever it was, that it transitioned to Daytona. And yeah, it was, you know, amazing experience going to that back in the day and seeing the variety and seeing all the crazy stuff that was happening. It was like watching it all kind of start to explode, because that was like right before the ball python shit really kicked off. And then I remember seeing when it was starting to kick off and get, you know, become you know,
What it is.
yeah, what it is now. And man, it's like it has been a long time, but it also hasn't been that long. So it's pretty
Yeah.
wild to see how much, work was done in such a short period of time.
And there's only
It's
like
crazy to think back that really wasn't that long ago when people couldn't even get them to eat. You know what I mean?
the contract's up in 2 or 3 more years, and then it's gonna be, from my understanding, Orlando again. So
Maybe. Yeah. I've wondered what's going to happen with that. I heard about the contract shit and whether it would continue. There's been rumors about it for years, so I don't know. I'm so out of the loop with so much stuff that I don't even know. I'm just like, is it going on this year? All right, I'm going. If it's still there, I'll go. I don't. Half the time I'm clueless as to what's going on in the industry with that kind of stuff, especially because with like the more popular stuff, the ball pythons and the geckos and all that, it just wasn't my thing, so I wasn't that into it and didn't pay a ton of attention. But now it is crazy nowadays. I think I was mentioned that to you a little bit backstage. Like, it's weird how many shows there are, period. There's seems like there's a show, at least 1 or 2 shows in Florida every month, if not half a dozen of them.
Yeah, between the Repticons and the show meets, there's one all the time.
Yeah,
Well,
constantly.
2 years ago, I think it was to the point where almost every weekend we could find a show somewhere in Florida and drive to a show and go to a show if we wanted to.
Yeah, probably. And it's probably not far off from that now, because it seems like, at least every few weeks there's something.
Yep.
And we had back in the day, we did have a monthly thing back in the day, but it was tiny. It was just we had the Central Florida Herpetological Society. So that was like at Edgewater High School in Orlando. And then that moves to the Mark Street Senior Center in downtown. And so it was cool. I mean, that was Wayne Hill. It was the same dude that runs the Daytona show and has. So it was Wayne Hill, and we used to get, visitors that would come in and do little presentations and stuff. We had Bill Love do a presentation one time on a Madagascar trip, and we'd have, various people come and do little speakers, and there'd always be like a little kind of small swap meet. But I mean, I'm talking like literally it's like, a total of 10 animals from between everybody were being, exchanged. So it wasn't like anything like a real show, but it was still cool. And I'm again, we were just the annoying little kids running around, probably irritating the hell out of everybody, but it was cool to get that experience and be able to be a part of that back at that time.
Heck yeah, it would have been.
Yeah, it was cool. I don't know. It doesn't seem like you hear much about any kind of herp societies anymore. Maybe it's just me. Maybe they're thriving out there, but I don't really hear much mention of them. I think the internet kind of made it, I guess, a bit redundant. Maybe not very necessary anymore.
Oh,
but
Peter got involved, huh?
Oh, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they shut them down. I have no idea, but could be.
They could be a pain in the butt.
Has this changed much? Like how ball pythons, when they started out, like back in the day, it was $20,000 for like a pied. Has the prices changed much for emerald tree boas and green tree pythons, or have they been pretty consistent?
No, they've been mostly consistent over the years. They go up and down a bit, but it's generally been equivalent to what it always was. Like they were always, like when I was a kid, it was, they seemed completely out of reach. That's why sometimes I still got to it's like, shit, it's pretty cool. I have a bunch of these that I produced because I remember being a kid and it just seemed like they ain't never gonna own one of those. You know what I mean? Yeah. And but no, they've always stayed regular. Relatively the same overall. They've been pretty stable. It's kind of like locality boas and stuff like that. Like it's a smaller niche thing, and there's not as many people into it, but there's always still a lot of enthusiastic keepers and people that are wanting to work with them. And so the basins, of course, are the ones that are real crazy expensive. Because the basins, there's Ed's been working line breeding those to produce these extreme crazy phenotypes for literally like 2 decades, and some of the other guys. So yeah, there's some wild looking ones. Super high white, crazy patterns and stuff that's coming out. And I think northerns, you'll see that eventually with northerns as well, but it's just going to take more time because most of us that are working with northerns are really still working from founding wild caught animals. So we're just producing first generation captive bred, or maybe there's a few people here and there doing, second generation, and then even less doing third and fourth generation Northern. So most people, it's still, basically first, second generation animals. And already there's a lot of really dope shit coming out from those pairings.
Yeah.
And so to see where that's going to go, in a couple more generations, I think is going to be, it'll be different looking, but I think it's going to be on par with the Basins.
Yeah.
We'll just start seeing more and more like really crazy high white stuff and the more extreme phenotypes. But I'm weird in that I like all of it. So I want to try to preserve the classic wild type looking ones as well, so that people, so you've got both. So it doesn't become just 100% the most extreme ones. You still have the ones, if for the people that like the wild stuff, like you still can get animals that look like the classic look. To me, it's just all different. It's like I think high white ones are cool. I like the anaconda phase ones. They're just all different variations rather than
designer, as they want to say it. Some people,
yeah. There's all, and you'll see a lot of that. There are some quote unquote designer emeralds that people do too, where it's a cross between the Northerns and the Basins.
Oh, that's cool.
And even though it's not really my thing, I can definitely appreciate that there's some amazing looking animals that come out of that. So they're some of the craziest looking patterns and high white animals come out of those pairings. But I'm more into just like taking the longer route and going line breeding the pure Northern stuff and the pure Basin stuff and going that way with it. But yeah, everybody's doing everybody does what they're into and
what they're into,
so,
right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's whatever somebody's into, there's a lot of ways you can go with it.
So can you breed for pattern within Emerald Tree Rose?
Yeah, but the pattern stuff, we're still trying to figure it all out. So there's so much natural variation with the quote unquote normal pattern that it's like, I think we still don't always necessarily know what we're looking at yet. Because you'll see, within a single litter, you'll see patterns that are like shaped quite a bit different from one sibling to the next. Yeah. A lot of variation in the amount of white. And then you see the same thing even with like the anaconda phase phenotype, which is the anaconda phase and the patternless are one of the only kind of like morphs, so to speak. We don't fully understand how the genetics are working with that yet, but like what it appears to me like with the anaconda phase, it's primarily a reduction in white. But like I went into it, before I had bred a few litters of them, I went into it and was kind of more under the impression that like, anaconda phase was really just one look. Like they just basically didn't have white. And so that was just kind of a dark pattern on the green. But now I realize it's like, man, some of them have a surprising amount of white and it's like the pattern's just shaped more oval. And some of them have almost no white whatsoever and really bold, dark patterns. So there's quite a lot of variation there. And just trying to figure it out, how it's working. And is it just, it might be like how Amazon tree boas are, since it's all corrallus, like they're kind of just naturally, there's almost a wild card element to when you pair stuff. Like you're trying to steer it in a particular direction, but you don't necessarily know exactly what you're going to get until it's on the ground,
Right.
And I think that's pretty much how it goes. But the main stuff as far as patternless is like the kind of, I guess with the Northerns anyways, the three primary patterns you see is just what they call the normal, like the classic, which is that kind of white lightning bolt, which can have a border to it or not. Sometimes it's just clean with no border. Some of them have a lot of dark border to them. And then you have the anaconda phase, which is, highly reduced white. And then you have the patternless, which a lot of people mix up anaconda phase and patternless. But to me, the true patternless ones have, almost no pattern whatsoever. So it's like they may have little blotches. It's like a lot of other patternless animals, throughout different species where it's like a true removal of the pattern versus just the anaconda phase where it looks like primarily the pattern's intact. It's just the white color that's been reduced.
Right. Kind of like how you say like some of them, they have like the super condas that look like it's patternless, but it's kind of just more washed it all out.
Yeah, it's that, and even that's something too. There's talk of the super anaconda phase, but I don't know for sure if there is one. There's talks of them, but nobody seems to have any living examples of them, at least that I've seen. So we'll see if that ends up being a legitimate thing or what. Because there's been some weirdness with breeding those, and that like people have. I've heard a couple claims of people getting anaconda face popping out of normal to normal pairings, and then also the number of anaconda face babies that are born in a litter seems to vary depending on what you pair it to. So maybe there's more than one gene involved. Don't really know for sure yet. There's still probably several more years of work because I don't think we'll be having any shed tests for them anytime soon. I think it's just too small. There's not the demand or the funding for it. So we got to pick it apart the slow way.
See, that's another cool thing about that, though. I mean, I hate to say it, it's actually not a bad thing because
it's cool.
Kind of keep them on the same roll, and nobody's coming over here and just swiping up real quick and kind of figuring things out real quick or doing this or that. Like I kind of like that, you know. Kind of holds it down too. It kind of holds it all locked down too.
Yeah, quick is one of those things. Quick is not the word when it comes to emeralds. Nothing about anything to do with them is quick. They grow slow, they digest slow, you know, in comparison to most pythons and shit. And yeah, you know, to get results from whatever projects you're working on. I mean, sometimes I forget. I'm thinking like, oh yeah, can't wait to see these second and third gen emeralds. And I'm thinking like, man, I'm going to be bent over with a cane by the time I see some of these. But it might be like 15, 20, 30 years. And I don't know. It's a while to go. So, but I think that's part of the drive that, you know, it's like, all right, this is, you got to work a long time to make it happen. And so it makes it that much more worthwhile when you finally get a good result.
What age do they reach sexual maturity, male and females, for the emerald trees?
The males can go pretty young. Like, you know, it's pretty common for the males to go sometime between 3 and 4 years old. Mm-hmm. The females, it seems like they almost always need to be 5, 6, 7 years old.
Okay.
So they take a while. There's I think people on occasion have had success with a really fast growing 4-year-old. But most of the people that have tried them at 3 or 4, it's like you just get a bunch of slugs and bad results. So it doesn't seem to be worth it.
Yeah, that's my cat is in the heat. So
I'm not hearing it right now, but
yeah.
she's screaming and
bro,
carrying
all
on.
Night long, man, all night long. Shit's
that
crazy.
Man, when I was younger, I had a cat that when that cat went in the heat, I remember coming home to the apartment one time and you could hear her through the door, and I'm like, I'm surprised the neighbor hasn't called the cops. That sounds like a sacrifice going on.
Oh my god! If I had neighbors, they'd be dying.
Yeah, I remember thinking like somebody's gonna call the police and think we're like doing something, because she just sounded it was insane, screaming at the top of her lungs like holy shit.
It's just a cat.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy.
That's why I tell mine to go outside. I open the front door. I'm like, out.
I can do that with the boy. He don't make that noise. I can't do that with her. I let him out. He'll come right back.
Mm-hmm.
I just gotta deal with it.
Gotta love her cats, though. That's for sure.
Oh yeah.
You work with any other animals besides those 2 species?
But just primarily the chondros and the emeralds. I got a few white lips and Jamaican boas. But yeah, my focus is pretty much on the emeralds primarily, and and the chondros. And I mean, if I had more space and more time, I would have, I'd have a lot more chondros, because I really love them. I'd have all the different localities and everything. But it's to the point now where it's like, all right, you gotta, either specialize, kind of focus a few things, or just have a pair of every variety there is. You know what I mean?
Colors, man, they come in is crazy. But then you gotta wait until them to grow up to really see how they're gonna look, because they got the OC.
Well, that's another big thing with it is the emeralds are a little more predictable than the chondros. Well, maybe kind of a lot more predictable in some ways, depending on what you're going for. But even the emeralds, it's like, I've had plenty of them that I was like, oh man, this is the one. Like this is the killer from the litter. And then it's like it reverses. The one you thought was really not all that big of a deal ends up being the really, really beautiful one. And the other one's just like, oh, it's so-so. I mean, I've never had one that I thought was going to be, top notch, turn out to be really like unimpressive, but I've definitely had it to where it's like, well, this one didn't really go the direction I thought it was going to go. You know, it either went way darker than I thought, or way lighter, or just different. You know, the pattern ended up the pattern doesn't change, but the kind of fill colors and the border, you know, that kind of subtle coloration within and around the pattern can change a lot. And you just don't really know until with the emeralds, it takes about a year, you know, maybe sometimes a little more than that. But the chondros can take several years towards like you don't know what this thing's doing until it's, you know, 2, 3, 4 years old. So again, it's everything's slower.
Have you bred the chondros yet?
Yeah. I produced my first clutch in 2020, and then I've not produced that many of them though. I've only produced I think three clutches. I've screwed up several chondro clutches where I tried maternal and just kept screwing up. You know, trying to do a maternal setup. I was real fixated on that. I still kind of am, and that I wanted to be able to do a maternal setup that was like as straightforward as possible and try to get, you know, and make it just basically a really smooth process for the female to maternally incubate without any issues. But the thing I kept screwing up over and over again was, you know, something to do with the nest box where if, you know, I had too much fluctuating ambient temperature in the room, and then what would inevitably happen is the eggs would end up too much condensation would build up, and then they get wet, and then shit goes downhill. Mm-hmm. And so I did successfully maternally incubate one clutch, and then the other 2 or 3 were artificially incubated. But I tried, but those were salvaged actually, because I tried maternal every time, and then the first one, the female abandoned the clutch after a few weeks, and then I just moved the rest of the eggs that were still good into the incubator, and they hatched out fine.
That's cool.
Did you ever
second
do
one? Prolapse? No, not in any adults. I had one small prolapse with a baby with a hatchling chondro, really really tiny one. It's like hardly even classified as a prolapse. Okay. And then I've had one, or I think maybe 2 juvenile emeralds that did it, but I've been lucky and I've not had any adults in either species do it yet. It's bound to happen at some point. You know what I mean? It's a common enough problem that I'm sure at some point I'll have an adult that does. But so far, fingers crossed, I haven't had that. And I think a lot of that has to do with the keeping them humid enough, and just well hydrated, but also the perches. A lot of people look at my perches, especially for my adults. I've had plenty of people that come at me with kind of a know-it-all type of thing where it's, those are way too thin for those adults. I'm like, I mean, but look at the results I'm getting with them, and look at when you see pictures of them in the wild. You know, they're almost always on skinny. Yeah. You know what I mean?
So the branches hanging down with them on.
Yeah, they like to be on something skinny, and they like to butt up against something like either a forked, you know, some kind of like forked branch thing where they kind of have that extra support right there, or just butt up to the actual trunk of whatever tree or plant they're at, you know, depending on where they happen to go. And so it's like, you know, I think overall the thinner perches is really the way to go. Not that they won't use a thick one occasionally, but like for the most part, they almost always you know, pick that. And you hear stories about that with both species all the time. You know, a lot of people, it's like it keeps hanging on the, you know, they'll have a heat panel, and I had this multiple times with the chondro that kept insisting on going up and perching on the actual, you know, electrical cord from the heat panel that was in the cage. So it's like, you know, this thing's trying to pick like a little tiny, like practically like, you know, not much thicker than my freaking headphones. Yeah. So it's like they're telling you something. A lot of people would look at that and be like, "Oh, they're so stupid." I'm like, they're telling you what they want. You know, you just got to pay attention to it.
Yeah, that's the smart thing right there. That's the right way to look at it. You know, what is the thing telling you? Not, no, this animal's dumb. You know, no, it's not actually trying to tell you something.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of those things, one of those lessons, and anybody who's heard that from Eugene Bissett, you know, that was one of the things he's always said is like, you know, be a student of the snake, or I don't remember if that's how it's the specific terminology he used, but like a student of the serpent, I think, is just basically, you know, pay attention to what the animals are showing you, and most of the time, you know, you can interpret, or at least a decent interpretation of what they're trying to show you with their behavior. Yep. You know what I mean? So, and that's for me, that was what I did with like the that's why I stopped spraying them, because I'm just looking at the behavior of the animals. I'm looking at the behavior of a lot of other people's animals, and I'm like, I know everybody else says that they love it and they're, frolicking about and that this is what they love to do, but I'm seeing a bunch of snakes that look like they're trying to get away from
They're all
spraying.
jumping from it,
Yeah, it's like, they don't look like they're loving it to me. Even, and some of them will obviously drink from that and everything. And of course, they're going to get rained on in the wild. But my mindset is it's like, man, what 99% of people are doing with whether it's a misting system or a manual spraying, it doesn't even come close to a rainstorm.
But even in the wild, though, in the rain, I mean, it had to be storming to me. Like, if you think about it, it's like they're going to be underneath the tree, which I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of other trees around covering over. Like, the rain is.
They're undercover. Exactly.
Yeah.
They're undercover most of the time when it's going to be raining, especially during the day. I mean, during the day, they just, it's not that they never move during the day, of course, but like 95% of the time, you watch their behavior. And they pick their spot for the day, and they try to pick a secure spot, and they just sit there. And I'm sure they're doing this in the wild too. They sit in their spot, and they just endure the day. They endure whatever happens. The temperature's fluctuating up and down a bit. They're dealing with some rain, but they're just enduring it. They're undercover. That's it. And then once the sun goes down, then that's when they become active. They wake up, and you see that like clockwork with them. They're very much a nocturnal animal, and so I just to me, it's like the their natural environment is a drought in Suriname. It's still 60 or 70% humidity. That's like it's like the driest it ever gets is still 60-70% humidity. Basically, the rest of their life they're probably in 95% humidity to basically 100%. So to me, that's the real key to it.
So what are you kind of doing for your humidity? It seems like that's the big key. Are you using a humidifier in your room?
No, I don't. I would if I was in a drier climate, but I basically, the room that they're in, the back room for the adults is usually, somewhere in the 50 to 60% range, because I have so many water bowls, big, large water bowls in all the enclosures. So for me, it's really just the depending on if it's a juvenile cage or a subadult or adult, I keep them over a water substrate until they're like 2 or 3 years old. So they're just over water. So the whole floor is water of the tub, just like, an 1/8 inch or something like this of purified water. And I change that either every day or every few days, depending on their age and everything. And so that's basically providing constant slow evaporation. And then when they're adults, I just basically it's pretty much the same thing. It's just the majority of the cage is covered with big water bowls. So either one huge bowl if it's a smaller size cage, or 2 huge bowls. And then just cage by cage, if how it is in any kind of room, when you get, whether it's racks of tubs or racks of cages, not every single cage is going to be exactly like the other one. So one cage is placed in a particular spot where it's getting more air hitting it, so it dries out more, or it's a little cooler or a little hotter or whatever. So some of them I might have to dump the water bowls to saturate the puppy pad, just for extra evaporation. And then it's just fine tuning the ventilation for that cage. And again, for all the tubs it's pretty much the same because they're all pretty consistent, but for the adult cages it varies a little bit. Some of them I gotta add more or less ventilation,
Right.
depending on it. But it's basically just trying to get that balance of enough airflow to where it's not super stagnant and getting moldy, but trying to retain as much humidity as possible. And then changing the water frequently is another big thing that I think helps, which can be a pain in the ass depending on how your cages are set up and everything. But I try to change the babies, like I basically do it kind of by age. Like babies get changed, babies, the yearlings get their water changed every day. The 1 to 2 year olds get changed about every other day. Unless, but I go through every day and check them. Like if they've soiled the water, if they've either defecated or urinated, then I obviously clean that. Right. But otherwise, if it's clean, I just change it every 2 or 3 days. And then adults, the same thing. Some, changes everywhere. It ends up with the adults being about every 3 or 4 days.
Okay.
And then that's it, And if I was in a drier climate, I would do basically the same thing, but I'd probably have to restrict the ventilation a little bit more, and you just basically have to put in a little bit more, not that much more. A lot of people seem to think, because I'm in Florida, it's like, oh, you're got all this, humidity, you don't ever have to do anything. But it's like, yeah, but I'm still inside. I mean, right now during the winter, I have to run space heaters in that room, and it dries the air, the humidity down into the 25% range. So it's not really hardly any different than what a lot of people are up north are dealing with. So you just got to pay attention to that shit, and you just got to pay attention to it, and everybody approaches it a different way. That's the way I like to do it. I could also see, there's people that take the approach of using, having a few live plants in there, and getting the plants will naturally boost the humidity, keeping them watered, and then using a substrate like cypress mulch or cocoa chip or whatever. Some people use a mix of that and soil and stuff. That's all cool if that's working for you and you want to deal with it. I just don't want to deal with it. I don't want to be dealing with a bunch of dirt and shit. It's just, and for me, it's like, I know some people will argue very much in favor of like the bioactive stuff, but to me, it's like, these snakes in the wild, you got to be realistic about what we're working with here. Like we're working with an arboreal species that in the wild is going to spend half the day, if not, well, probably a lot of days, is going to spend all day and sometimes weeks in a row, 10, 20, 30, 40 feet above the ground. The soil, the bioactive soil is not doing anything for this animal. It's not, it's only going to be dealing with that and encountering it when it's hunting. That's about it. Because when they hunt, they come down low. A lot of people don't necessarily know that, especially if you're not, haven't already looked into them. They're not really, I'm sure, again, they probably occasionally do, but they're not hanging way up in the tree, catching stuff way up high. They come way down and they hunt basically just right off the ground. And the babies do it too. Like the babies will just hunt. Well, I got to assume it with the emeralds that it's the same thing the chondro is doing, but it's I think a pretty accurate assumption that, the baby chondros will literally just be hanging with their head just like 2 or 3 inches above the ground. And they're just waiting for a skink,
something to run by. Right.
They're just waiting. They're just basically, they're really good daytime skink hunters for the most part. It's at least everything we know about them. And considering how the emeralds act and their kind of role in their environment, I think they're doing probably the exact same thing, or at least very close. They're hanging pretty low to the ground, grabbing stuff, taking the meal, and then they cruise up a little bit. They don't go as high. The juveniles don't seem to go anywhere near as high as the adults. That's probably just shit, who would want to at that size? It's a whole different ball game to grow up. If it crawls up a foot compared to 20, 30 foot when it's, little tiny snake, it's a whole different trip. So
it's a whole different trip. That's a big fall for them,
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. That's one thing that's curious, just kind of just randomly made me think when you said that is a big fall, is that we still don't really know with the emeralds, since they're live birth. We don't really know for sure how they do that in the wild. Like, do they drop them from like a surprising height, or
that is wild?
We just don't know. We don't know for sure. And we've seen in captivity, because realistically, if we're being honest, nobody's got a setup in captivity that can compare to the wild, no matter how much they want to delude themselves.
Right.
It's nothing like the wild. And so we just don't know. We've seen them do everything from dropping them at from several feet up off the ground, and the babies just kind of plop. You know what I mean? They just kind of get splat down, and then we've seen them everything in between, where they, I know at least one guy that I've spoken to where his female delivered them almost like a boa constrictor. Like, she actually went to the ground and delivered them on the ground, which a lot of Amazon tree boas will do that. Kyle said what? He said, do they just fall or do they grab on the branches? So this is what I think. Just based on what I've seen, I think what probably is the most likely thing they do in the wild is they try to drop them or aim them to where they can just immediately grab onto something, some kind of perch or some kind of branches or vines or something. That's what I think is the most likely thing. And I say that because I've watched multiple females. I've been lucky enough to where out of those 10 litters, I've observed 9 of them, from beginning to end. Because I know now, I know the pattern. I've seen enough of them do it, at least here, to where I know like when it's going to happen. And, like I've got a good idea when it's going to happen and how to catch it. And they look to me like they try to aim their vent so that the baby will emerge and just go straight onto to a perch. But it doesn't always happen that way. But that's what I've seen the most of. It looks like they make a conscious effort to aim it so the snake just comes right out and just basically exits and goes straight to a perch. But you got to factor some of the babies are still, the sac hasn't broken, or at least not completely broken.
Yeah.
So they just kind of get plopped out. What I mean? I think that they have a thing they try to do, but what they try to do versus what happens might not always be the case. So
kind of wonder too, because like my dog actually, when he was a puppy, he had to have kind of open heart surgery, so they had to go through his ribs. And the vet, I remember watching the video, and I remember the vet telling me because he was just born and wasn't but so old, his ribs were like rubber. They're like, look, we could literally go in and open them and go in and do what we need to do, and as soon as we let go, they'll flex right back. And I was like, what?
Interesting. Yeah.
And I was like, that's pretty cool. So now it kind of makes me think in my head too, like, well, when they're born, is that kind of how they are? Like, they could take a smack and kind of everything kind of just will go kind of back, and it's not going to affect them really. I think
probably to a degree, because they definitely they're softer and kind of just squishier in general.
Right. They're not fully, so it's like not like you're really messing up anything if it did take a hit. It's kind of like a shock for it, but it's not going to maternally hurt anything or do anything wrong.
Yeah. Well, but this is where you also get into the thing where it's kind of like, all right, I like one of the things I try to do now, the first couple litters that I did, I just, usually just have a single puppy pad for the substrate. And I noticed a couple of them when the babies dropped, I'm just like, all right, they probably do get dropped in the wild, but they're going to probably get dropped into something softer than just smacked on a pad with the, So what I now normally do will put like layers and layers of paper towel and multiple layers of puppy pad. So at least soften that. And then I also saturate it, in preparation, so that it's at least hopefully a little bit of cushion there, because I do think there'd probably be a difference between, although they could get dropped on a rock in the wild too. You never know. It could just
because it makes you wonder. We don't know in the wild, so it makes you wonder: are they up there 20 feet in the air dropping these things down? And you're like, holy crap! Could that be happening? We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know.
If it is, and if the babies are surviving, is that partially just part of it? They come out, their bones are kind of like rubbery and stuff, so it's not like it's really going to affect them anyway. Circle of life type deal. We don't know. I don't know.
There's been a few. I can't remember. There was a video I watched. Who was that? It might have been Ryan Wallison. I think it was him, or maybe it was somebody else. They had a fairly, not like a crazy tall cage, but I think it was a 4 or 5 foot tall enclosure where it looked like the female was dropping them to where the babies were falling like probably about 3 feet, maybe even a little bit more than that. I don't remember for sure, but it was definitely like, there's a little bit of air time where it's not just like go straight to the ground. It was like, woo. And so, yeah, you got to wonder how high up they're doing that. It is interesting. I heard somebody who had spoken to, I think it was, I don't know if it was a direct quote from somebody who traps them, one of the trappers in Guyana, but they had found some what looked to be a freshborn litter, like right on the edge of the river, right amongst the plants, where it looked like they were possibly delivered into the water. And so we don't know that either, if that's something that they do. And there's another case. Somebody had put a comment on one of my YouTube.
Wild, actually. Somebody
from Brazil had put a comment on one of my videos on YouTube of a female that was, I can't remember if it was I think it was a female that was giving birth, and it was Google Translate, so maybe there was something lost in translation there, but it seemed like they were suggesting that in the wild there they deliver them on the trunks of the trees in the river, or like on the roots, you know what I mean? So basically you figure if there's a network of roots right there at the edge of a river, they might deliver them there. So who knows? But regardless, yeah, there's still a lot of work to be done there to figure it out, and whether we'll really be able to know for sure without witnessing it in the wild, probably not. You know, we just kind of try to guess based on what we're seeing in captivity.
And even if you did witness it in the wild, it's like you got to witness it like a bunch of times to be like, okay,
Yeah, because
it's like an accidental thing, you know, for this one snake or something like that, you know.
yeah, that's one of the things too. You know, it's easy to get caught up in that kind of stuff when looking at, especially a species that there's not a whole lot of, you know, documented stuff on them in the wild. It can be easy to see like one example of some behavior or some thing and think like, oh, they all do that all the time. But it's like, man, they're wild. They're animals. They do all sorts of stuff. They do, you know, and they just do what they got to do. So, you know, I remember listening to a good example of this. So like in captivity, a lot of us, and I've definitely been guilty of it at various points, I try not to do it that much anymore unless it's something that matters, like incubation temperature. But a lot of times people get, you know, you get OCD and obsessive over, you know, the numbers of something, the numbers of the temperature. Oh, it's got to be exactly this degree, and it's got to be this. You know, everything's got to be exact to this specific thing. And I remember listening to an interview with one of the guys that had, you know, was catching, and he was like the trapper of a lot of wild northerns for years and years. He doesn't do it now, but he had done that for years and years. And he was saying, you know, after seeing so many of them in the wild, like they just, when you find them, like they're not necessarily trying to pick the perfect temperature or something in whatever spot they're in. They're just searching for whatever they're searching for, and you happen to come across them at that point. If they're hunting, they came across a spot. Maybe they smelled, you know, a trail. The rodents were going there, and they're just gonna go and hang and try to, you know, make it work. They're not sitting there going, "Wow, I don't know. Perch is too thin or too thick," or you know, they're not doing any
a little too cold here.
They're not. Yeah, you know what I mean. They're not gonna. So they'll do all sorts of different stuff, and like, you know, and if they prefer vines over branches, or, you know, we don't know enough yet. You know, for every picture you'll see of one that's in a vine system, you'll see them in a regular branch on a tree. So it's like they're probably just using all of this stuff. You know what I mean? Just like any other snake does. And so, yeah, I think it's easy to get hung up on some of those things sometimes. And, especially like I said, when you don't have much to go on, it's definitely tends to be more that way where you're like, oh, this happened once, so that must be it. Mm-hmm. And it's like, maybe, yeah, maybe it is. Maybe in sometimes maybe it is, but other times it's like, yeah. You see all sorts of random shit with reptiles in the wild. So, but yeah, that's yeah, my experience with, you know, I consider my own experience with, even though I've had pretty good luck with them so far, it's like 10 litters is not that much. That's really not that much to go on as far as observing stuff. You know, and
you've got it dialed down though. I mean, you're like, compared to most people, that you seem pretty consistent with your stuff. And, like, you've got it dialed to the T for sure.
Yeah, I've got it working well, but it's just my mindset is like, I think it's because I'm old school with this shit. So like for me, like when I think of like, oh, that guy's been, you know, produced a lot of litters or something, to me it's like I'm thinking Eugene or Ed or something like this, where it's like 150 litters. You know what I mean? So to me, it's just like I've just.
They've also been doing it since the early '80s. You know,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, it's just a matter of time. Yeah, it's like, all right, you know, I got a long ways to go.
Facts. Yeah, but, don't doubt yourself now. Do not doubt.
No, I do feel like I've done well, and I feel like I've got a decent grip on what I'm doing, but I just feel like there's still tons of stuff to learn, and still tons of stuff that I may turn out. I mean, who knows? Maybe somebody out there is going to totally prove me wrong with the droplets thing, and there'll be some kind of study done to prove that, you know, it's absolutely essential for them to be healthy or happy. But for me personally, it's what I've done enough, or what I've done so far is enough to show me that like it's not, you know.
Right.
I don't think it is, because I wouldn't, if it was that crucial, I don't think I would have been able to have the success that I've had with them so far. You know, working with them at all stages, whether it's establishing wild ones or raising babies up. It's like, if they're doing as well as they're doing, with the humidity and the fresh water being the key, then to me that shows that's the more critical element of care for them than the droplets themselves. You know what I mean? Or the physicality of getting droplets on their body. I just don't, I don't think it's shit. Basically, I don't think it means much.
I hate to say it, but it's opened my mind. Like when you said that, and how you're like, well, I changed out my spraying. I'm doing more big water bowls in there and stuff. It's like it's true though. When opening these bins, it's like I'm using my mister and missing my ball pythons. They're jumping back, not wanting that water. They don't want me to sit there and miss them.
Yeah, and see, I think the thing is like my outlook on it now, because I've made a lot of jokes and intentionally, basically just fuck around and say stupid shit with the spray Illuminati and this kind of silly stuff.
Illuminati.
People like, I think it comes off as like I'm like advocate, like, oh, if you're spraying your snakes, you're a terrible person, and that's not. I don't think that at all. I just make a lot of stupid jokes about it. I just think people should think about it in like. And again, this applies primarily. I'm not saying this necessarily translates to every single species, but it's more so just like, if you break down what most people are doing when they spray, it's like the primary thing you're getting out of this is bumping the humidity up.
Yep.
That's the primary thing. Sure, they might drink a little bit of water off their coils, and I'm sure in nature they probably do that sometimes, but for me, it's just common sense. Like, think about it. Like, how long it would take them if you watch and I've seen this a million times. You watch a baby green tree python. I'm sure it's the same thing with ball pythons or boas or anything else. If you watch them drink from a water bowl, they'll sit there and just drink and drink and drink and drink and drink. It would take 10, 20, 30 times the amount of time and effort to get that same amount of water intake by lapping little tiny ass droplets off their body and all.
They sit there and drink.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think my thought process on it is that, they're probably doing that. It's like if they're drinking some droplets off their body and stuff, it's just a little bit of it's like, taking a sip of water here and there. It shouldn't be the primary water delivery method.
Yeah. Right.
You know what I mean? Not that we're the same, but like, can you imagine if like you're thirsty as hell, like you're like dying of thirst, and all you get is just like, there's a little dropper.
Yeah.
I'll see in 3 hours. You know what I mean? If you have the choice, you're going to obviously drink from a glass or a bottle. Like you're going to, you know what I mean? Yep. And I think the snakes show you the same thing too. Like I saw a video the other day that I just, now I've talked enough shit and made enough comments where I try to, I'll only engage and cause a little bit of drama if I'm in that right mood to just stir some bullshit. But like, I was tempted to say something on the video because it was a cool video. It was a green tree python. And it's covered in, they had just sprayed it. So it's covered in droplets and everybody loves the look of that. Everybody's, it's like beautiful. And hey, it looks cool. It does. It looks cool.
Right.
But so all these people, oh my God, it's amazing. It's, it's incredible. And it loves it. And it loves the getting sprayed and all this. But it's like, okay, in the video, the snake had been sprayed. It's covered in droplets, but it's guzzling water out of its water bowl.
That's where the whole thing.
It had the choice
between
drinking the droplets that are all over the place or the water bowl.
It chose the water.
It's guzzling the water bowl.
Thing comes in like I remember when I first started to keep my bearded dragons outside, and like I went to Eddie with Serpentine Exotics. Because he keeps all of his outside here in Florida and does really well with it. So I was going to him for advice. I was like, well, man, I was doing this and doing this. And he's like, wait a minute. He's like, that's what you want to do for that animal. That's not what that animal actually wants. And when he said that, I was like, holy shit, you're right. I'm over here being OCD thinking this animal needs this and doing this for it. And I'm helping the situation. Really, no, I'm stressing the hell out of the animal. It's not what it wants.
It's one of those things that's hard to do because we all like, people have good intentions. It's like the overfeeding. It's like the overfeeding thing is the most common still example of this kind of thing of doing what you want to do for the animal because you have good intentions. You want It's just like all of our pets. I mean, most people's dogs and cats are obese. You know what I mean? At least to some degree. Not all of them, but a lot of them are because we like to, because it's like, it feels good. It's like, oh, you take
I got
care
a
of your
fat
animal.
cat.
Yeah,
Big old fat cat.
oh yeah, I've had them. Yeah, we've all been there with that, and so it's like it's because you want to take care of the animal, and so people try to do that with the reptiles, and that's, like I said, the most common thing is overfeeding them, thinking that, like, it needs to eat all the time. It needs to eat all the time. But in reality, it's like, in some cases, like, man, you're literally doing, like, your intentions are right. Your intentions are good. You're trying to do good for the animal.
Right.
Yeah. And it's because you think that that's what it should, you want to do it. You want to see it eat. You want to see it doing well. You're trying to do what you think is best for it. But the reality is, in some cases, you're overfeeding to the point where you're like you're killing the animal. You're shortening its life significantly by doing too much. And the same thing can apply with stress and I think with spraying and all that kind of stuff too. It's like your people forget that, like, these snakes, they even if they get to the point where they tolerate handling from us, and they do, I think, depending on how you go about doing it, like, I think they get mental stimulation that can be good for them to interact with people and to have that. It's not that that's all terrible for them, but you overdo it, or you're doing it in a way that's causing them additional stress, and maybe people aren't recognizing that stress because they're just not, I mean, shit, we've all seen videos. I've seen videos of stuff. Like, there was one I saw. I think it was something. It was like somebody. I think it was a ball python. I remember seeing a video at some point. It looked like it was some kind of viral thing, and it was like a ball python that, to me, as an experienced keeper, I'm pretty sure this thing was like yawning and gasping for breath because it was like riddled with a respiratory infection. Mm-hmm. But the video, it was like the owner was like, "Oh, it's yawning and happy and loving," and it sometimes drives me crazy to see that kind of shit, because it's like, it's not, smiling and yawning because it loves you. It's got a fucking respiratory infection. It's gasping to breathe.
Yep.
You got to understand the differences between those kind of things, and yeah, it just, some of that stuff. I mean, I try to be, I don't want to sound like too much of an old grouch about it, but some of that shit, it's just like, it's frustrating to see.
It is though. It is. It kind of is when you see it, because I don't know. It's like I said though. It's more about that person and what they have. The time when I look at it and I see that going on, it's what that person feels like. They're like, "Oh, that poor snake. I need to. No, I need to give it more meals. I need to. He's hungry. He's hungry." It's like,
oh yeah,
no, that's really what you want. That's not what that animal needs or wants. Technically, it's an opportunist animal. It ain't running across this rat every freaking day in the wild. That ain't happening, And
that's where people, they won't recognize that it's like, they'll insist that you're wrong if you try to kind of teach them about something like that. With the meals is a really good example of that, because especially if you got a solid feeding snake that's just a real rock solid feeder. I mean, they would basically eat every single time you ever offered them food for their whole life. They would never
turn. I'm a puppy girl in here right now. I could feed almost every hour of the day if I wanted to.
And she would and people don't realize that, because this even happens in the wild. Snakes will literally eat themselves to death.
Yeah,
they will try to eat a meal that they can't even consume, and it'll tear through their stomach, and they'll kill themselves trying to eat, because it's they're opportunistic animals. They don't get any kind of guarantee of anything. So they're programmed to respond to a meal. They got to take what they can get, because it could be weeks, it could be months before they get something else. So they've just got to eat that way. And on that same tip, it's like when you're feeding them, because I'll feed my emeralds pretty big meals compared to what most people do, and then I just let them go a long time without the next one. It's like, you can't feed them a huge meal
3 or 4 weeks until you're feeding them again.
Yeah, you can't. If I feed, and even with the juveniles, if I feed a juvenile a really big meal, I let it digest it and defecate before I feed it again, because that's one of the things with the emeralds in particular. It doesn't seem to be quite. I mean, it is still a problem with chondros, but not, for whatever reason, just not as bad. But they don't do well if you got 2 or 3 meals, or God forbid more meals backed up into them before they've taken a shit. Mm-hmm. They get super constipated, and then they get all sorts of problems from that. So you really got to try to go, as close to like a 1-to-1 meal to defecation ratio as possible. Give it time to just digest the meal, pass it, and then feed it again, a couple days later or whatever, because if you do it too much, then they just, they're backed up and then they're miserable. They can't even perch right because they're just too full of shit, literally. Just completely full of shit.
Yeah. You're never giving them a chance to like burn the energy or even like, think about like us, for instance, we run on empty stomachs all the time. I know I do. I run on empty stomach all the time. Like, to me, that's partially a good thing. You don't want to have full food constantly in you, and never not out of you.
That's something my dumbass needs to get back into doing, is fasting occasionally, and instead of just constant snacking and stupid shit. But yeah, you're right though.
I just got back on my routine. So.
Yeah. When I did that, I felt so much better when I was doing that. You know what I mean? And it's common sense because you're basically, your digestive system needs a rest.
Yep.
You can't, if you're just taxing it 20, and these animals, it's no different. When they gorge, because I think that most of them, the boas and pythons anyways, is different for colubrids, I think, but even for them, it's really kind of applies the same way. Like, they go through periods of feast and famine. They're getting tons of food and they're going to eat and eat and eat, but then they get a break from that. They might go weeks or months with nothing.
Yep.
And they're getting way more exercise. With the emeralds and the chondros, the biggest thing is that it's almost impossible to really replicate what they do in the wild with the vertical climbing, because who can keep even one of them, let alone more than one of them, in a 10, 20, 30 foot tall cage?
Yeah.
It's impossible. It's just totally impractical. And like, people, not that a little extra height's a bad thing, because I think it's probably, you should always try to give them as much space as you can, but I've seen people get real hung up, and I've even mentally got myself in that space before, where you can get really hung up on the height or something, or even a little bit of difference in the small differences in the size of the box that they're in. But it's like, I mean, let's be realistic. Is this snake experiencing a vastly different climbing experience because the cage is 6 inches taller than another one?
Yeah,
right.
Of course not. You know what I mean? It needs to be probably 6, 7, 8 foot or higher to really do justice to a proper vertical climbing experience.
Yep.
And so it's just one of those things where because they're not able to get that in captivity, you got to, be that much more mindful of them getting overweight, because you just, but you could take them out. And I was doing this more when I had the bamboo in the backyard at the old place. I would take them out and let them climb up, do a little bit of that, just vertical climbing on a bamboo pole. Mm-hmm. And you can do stuff like that, to let them get some of that experience. But it's hard to actually provide a cage that has that,
Right. Unless you got like your own at-home aviary, which
would be pretty. It would be cool. I would love to set some up that way, but I mean, you need so much space to do it, and
you have to have so much.
And doing it outside would be cool, but there's keeping outdoors is got a ton of. It's got a lot of benefits, but it's also got a lot of challenges that come with it, because most of the places you're going to live in the U.S., the weather is going to be too volatile to just put them out there and set it and forget it. You got to pay close attention to what's going on from one day to the next, and even within the same day.
Imagine you have, like, in Florida, a 20-foot aviary. Wintertime comes, you got to get out there, pull up the 20-foot ladder and start pulling these things out of the trees.
Yeah, it would be crazy. I do think it would be super cool though to have them and be like, I would love to just actually go out and like climb, have to climb up in a ladder and like check
them out,
way high up. I think it would be so dope to watch them do that and watch them actually climb up and down. It's just so impractical. It's one of those things that's very impractical to do, and so you got to just do the next best thing that you can and figure out. That's why most cages that people use, they end up giving them more horizontal space, just because it's more practical for them to be able to crawl, horizontally versus vertically. And as far as how we keep them, and especially when you're working with more than one of them. So yeah, it's just I've tried to think of smarter ways to be able to give them, some kind of a supplemental exercise, and it's just everything gets very hard to do, in a practical sense if you're trying to breed them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's tough, but I definitely encourage people, if you're just keeping one or two of them as a pet, You don't necessarily need to handle them a lot or anything, but give them, if you want to take them out and let them get some vertical climbing in, whether that's indoors or outdoors, or, get a little bit of that stuff going. And I think that's mostly going to be a health benefit for them.
Mm-hmm.
Come on.
Before we let you out of here, my internet is bugging. It keep kicking me out using my secondary camera instead of using my.
Oh yeah.
You answer this question for Kyle. What do you think has been the most important factor to the success that you've had so far?
It's going to sound corny, but I think patience. Honestly, it's going to sound. I know that sounds a little corny, but it's the thing that, because one of the things that I didn't do that almost everybody tends to do with them, I didn't rush out and buy as many as I could at once. That's what a lot of people try to do, is just load up on wild caught adults and then start throwing them together as quickly as possible. There's a lot of people that try to do that, and it rarely pans out with good results. It's a good way to lose a whole collection. It's a good way to get overwhelmed. You know what I mean? Before you'd had an opportunity to even really know what you're doing with the species, you're just trying to deal with, the numbers, because they just don't seem to be like a lot of other species. You can't, there's been plenty of people and a few examples of this recently, pretty famously recently, where, people tried to basically gold rush it and get as many as possible and throw them all together and try to get something going quick. And it ends up, tanking the whole project.
Yeah.
So just going slow, if you're the best way, like anything, I mean, basically with any species, if you really got the patience, you start off with, captive bred babies, raise them yourself. And then, once you're at that stage where they're mature, then, you go from there. That's if you're wanting to breed them. If you're just wanting to keep them as a pet, you get yourself ideally a captive born, like a true captive bred and born, or at least, second best is a captive born from an imported female. If somebody got an imported female that was already gravid and drops babies, and that's your second best route to go. And then they're really a pretty hardy species if they're healthy, if they're not carrying any of the kind of, nasty infections that some of the wild ones come in with. Mm-hmm. They can be pretty hardy, and you just dial in their parameters correctly, and don't overhandle them, don't overstress them. In my opinion, don't overspray them. If you want to spray them a little bit to boost stuff, a little bit of extra humidity boost and a little bit of extra hydration, that's fine, but just don't overdo it. They're just because they get rained on, super frequently in their native habitat. Like, you got to be realistic about that. They're not in their native habitat in your box in your house, especially if you're not in a climate that's anywhere near. I mean, I'm at least in Florida, so it's closer to what they would experience. But and that's another tip I would say is important for keeping them, is regardless of where you live, what you're doing. I don't think that they should go through I don't really think their humidity should ever drop below 60 or 70%. I just think that's about as low as you want it to go. And so if you're letting them get down to where their air, the humidity in that enclosure's 15, 20, 25%, you're probably going to have, they may still live and they still may do okay, but you're going to run into problems. Yeah. You're going to start running into a lot of the common, the shedding problems, the getting super constipated, prolapses, all these kind of shit like that. Yeah. And even our eyes, because their lungs are meant to be breathing in moist air, not bone dry shit.
Bone dry.
Yeah. Yep. Hell yeah. Appreciate it.
Humidity air, guys. Make sure there's humidity in it.
Yeah, just keep it, whatever you got to do to keep it. The other thing is, you don't want their setup to be super wet to where it gets just, bacteria ridden.
Mold and bacteria.
And that's one of the challenges, is like you really, like, there's no one size fits all to getting that humidity dialed in right and getting that balance. You gotta just experiment with your room, your setups, and your methods, and try to get the humidity to a good high level that's pretty stable, but not constant wet, constant saturated and nasty. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, and not spraying makes that a lot easier.
Yeah.
So,
It is key.
you know,
Spray less. Spray less.
yes,
Spray less.
spray less. That should be my motto.
Motto. I like it though. I kind of like it. You know? It definitely gave me a different perspective on it now. So I'm definitely not. You know, I'm gonna try to go about this a different way now. I think I'm gonna try something different.
Yeah, like I said, I definitely don't want to tell people don't ever spray. You know, do what you want to do, but I think just going at it from a more, looking at what you're doing and seeing what's happening and whether it's truly working or not, versus just assuming that this is the way that everything has to be, and you've got to spray the shit out of them because they come from the rainforest. Because sorry, they're not living in a rainforest in your box in your room. It's just, you got to be realistic about it.
Oh yeah. So let the people know what socials you have.
So the social media I have it's Snake Spirit on Instagram. That's pretty much the most common way that I'm on any kind of social media, and I'm hating it more and more every day. But I got to, we all got to do it. So yeah, so that's pretty much the main one. I am on YouTube under the same name, and then Wekiva Herpetoculture is the company name, but I've been pretty lackluster with the socials for that stuff. So yeah, so that should be it. And and forewarning, I post some weird memes and BS that's probably just going to be either you'll think it's funny or just going to think this guy's fucked in the head. Who knows what? You're not gonna know. But it's just all meant to be goofy and fun. So none of it should be taken personally.
Hey, we're reptile breeders. We know we're not normal.
Yeah, we're not normal.
Pretty much.
That's normal.
So I tell people I'm not normal.
Thank you for your time, Chris. Appreciate it, man. Appreciate you for jumping on it and kicking it with us.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Definitely, Chris. Definitely. It's definitely nice meeting you, learning about the cool stuff you got in the chat. Of course, guys. Thank you guys for coming out. Couldn't do without it. And like I always tell
thanks, Kyle.
Be kind to one another.
Be kind. Maybe we'll run into you at Daytona this year. If you pull up.
Yeah, I go pretty much every year. Yeah, there's very few that I've missed. So that's the one show I tend to go to every year.
Well, hopefully I get to see you this year then.
Yeah, I should be. It's like same. I haven't even looked. It's going on the same time, mid to late August, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I should be there.
Come on.
Hell yeah.
All right, Joe.
All right.
Do I kick myself out here, or you kick me out? I can't remember.
I'm gonna kick you out, and we're about to end the show, and then we'll kick you out. The whole thing.
Okay.
So thank everybody for tapping in. Y'all know what to do, man. Get those flowers out, get those smiles out. And tomorrow is not promised. 5 minutes from now is not promised. So call your loved ones, let them know that you care. Matter of fact, call your mother, get the fuck off my phone. We out.
Peace.
Peace.
See ya.